2:51 a.m. The waters of the Strait of Hormuz looked calm under the dim glow of the moon. But inside the Combat Information Center of the American destroyer, the atmosphere was anything but calm. A radar technician leaned closer to his screen, his voice suddenly cutting through the quiet room. Signal spike detected. Unknown transmission heading toward the Iranian coast. On the giant tactical display, a thin red line stretched across the map. The signal originated from a Russian intelligence vessel sitting quietly near the coastline and pointed directly toward a network of Iranian radar stations hidden in the mountains. That connection could only mean one thing: someone was feeding targeting data. If the signal stayed active, Iranian anti-ship missiles hidden along the coast could soon lock on to the American fleet moving through the narrow strait. In a place where nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply passed every day, even a single missile strike could trigger a global crisis. The tactical action officer looked at the countdown clock on his console. 10 minutes. That was the estimated time before the enemy could complete a targeting chain and prepare a launch solution. 12 miles from the coast, the Russian intelligence ship drifted slowly through the dark water. Officially, it was conducting surveillance of shipping traffic, but the reality was far more dangerous. The vessel's advanced sensors were tracking the heat signatures and radar reflections of every American ship in the region. Instead of broadcasting openly, the Russian crew transmitted the data in encrypted bursts toward Iranian coastal batteries hidden in hardened bunkers. Those missile units didn't even need their own radar anymore. They could rely entirely on the Russian ship's sensors. It was a clever workaround. If Iran launched missiles using Russian targeting data, responsibility would become difficult to prove. But what they didn't know was that the American fleet had already detected the transmission. On the deck of a nearby aircraft carrier, 2 electronic warfare jets were already preparing for takeoff. Their engines roared to life, echoing across the dark ocean as the pilots received the order. Their mission wasn't to destroy anything. Their mission was to control the invisible battlefield of information. Moments later, the jets blasted off the carrier deck and climbed into the night sky. As they reached altitude, powerful electronic warfare systems came online. Instead of simply blocking the Russian signal with noise, the aircraft did something far more sophisticated. They intercepted it. Within seconds, the jets began feeding false telemetry into the transmission. To the Russian operators, everything looked normal. Their screens still showed the American fleet sailing north through the strait, but the data being forwarded to Iran had quietly changed. On Iranian radar displays, the entire American fleet suddenly appeared 50 miles south of its real position. Missile operators along the coast believed they had a perfect targeting picture. In reality, they were looking at digital ghosts. While the electronic battle unfolded in the air, a destroyer accelerated through the water at full speed. Its powerful engines pushed the warship to more than 30 knots as it maneuvered directly between the Russian vessel and the Iranian coastline. The American destroyer locked its fire control radar onto the intelligence ship. No weapons were fired, but the signal was unmistakable. "We see you, and we're not letting you operate here." Just after 3 a.m., the strategic situation changed again. Another American carrier strike group entered the region after a high-speed transit from the open ocean. Now, 3 aircraft carriers operated together in the same theater. Hundreds of aircraft, dozens of escort ships, submarines hidden beneath the waves. Their radar, satellites, and surveillance aircraft linked together into a single massive network that tracked everything across the Persian Gulf. To the Russian intelligence officers staring at their radar screens, it looked like madness. Hundreds of new contacts appeared at once, ghost signals flooding their systems as American electronic warfare filled the region with interference. Their sensors were overwhelmed. They could no longer tell what was real. At 03:07 a.m., Iran decided to test the defensive perimeter.
A reconnaissance drone lifted off from a coastal airstrip and headed toward the American fleet. It was meant to confirm whether the Russian data link was still accurate. It never reached its destination. From the American destroyer, a long-range interceptor missile launched into the sky. The weapon climbed rapidly before turning toward the incoming drone. Seconds later, a small flash appeared high above the water. The drone disappeared instantly. The interception was so precise that it left almost no thermal trace behind. The test had failed. But the most critical operation that night was happening far away from the ships in the strait. While the electronic chaos filled the skies above the Gulf, several stealth fighters quietly slipped into Iranian airspace, hidden from radar and guided by real-time intelligence from surveillance aircraft far above the region. They moved toward a series of facilities buried deep within the mountains. Those locations were believed to be involved in developing advanced missile systems. At 03:12 a.m., the aircraft released glide weapons from a safe distance. The bombs silently traveled across the cold mountain air, guided by satellite navigation toward precise coordinates. Moments later, 3 massive explosions shook the Zagros mountain range. The blasts were powerful enough to register on regional seismic sensors. The facilities were destroyed before their operators even realized they were under attack. Back in the Strait of Hormuz, the Russian commander attempted one final move. His ship turned toward the American fleet, trying to close the distance and regain sensor contact that electronic jamming couldn't block. Then something unexpected happened. Just ahead of the Russian vessel, the dark surface of the ocean suddenly split open. An enormous submarine surfaced slowly from the water. Its black hull rose like a shadow in the night. The message required no translation. The submarine carried enough cruise missiles to strike targets hundreds of miles away. If the situation escalated even slightly, the consequences would be immediate. The Russian ship stopped its engines, its radar systems powered down, and the intelligence link that had started the entire confrontation went silent. By 4 in the morning, the Strait of Hormuz returned to its usual quiet rhythm. Oil tankers continued their journey through the narrow waterway, unaware of the silent battle that had just unfolded. No missiles had struck ships, no naval battle had erupted, but the strategic outcome was undeniable. A covert intelligence operation had been dismantled in minutes, hidden facilities had been destroyed, and a potential crisis in one of the world's most important waterways had been prevented before it could begin. For the sailors on watch inside the destroyer's combat center, the end of the shift arrived like any other night. They logged the events, handed control to the next crew, and stepped away from their consoles. Another quiet morning was beginning over the Gulf, and the ships of the fleet continued their patrol, guarding a narrow stretch of water that carried the lifeblood of the global economy.